it's cutting off at your forehead.
Oh, it
Can
is.
I adjust it?
Yes, you are. The voice you just heard was the voice of David Kabwa, and the footage you just watched was of him adjusting my camera just before we started the podcast and accidentally switching it off. What that means is that we only have footage of David for the entire podcast, so we won't have any of that back and forth footage like we usually have. What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about students. That's all I ever think about.
Right. If you're the type of person who just puts on a YouTube video and listens but doesn't watch, then this doesn't affect you. And you can obviously also listen to the podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify or anywhere else you get your podcast. However, if you're here to find out what 2021 holds for students, how the vaccine works, or the controversy surrounding DJ Fresh, I'm going to be making smaller, shorter edited videos on those topics only from the podcast. So you can find those in the short clips playlist, which is on this same channel. I'm also going to be doing reshoots for those, which means that they will have the normal back and forth conversation type footage that you're used to on this channel. Thank you for supporting the Ground Floor podcast, and thank you for supporting this channel, especially to the new people who've subscribed over the past few days in anticipation of this episode. David and I had a great time filming this, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as we did.
Ground Floor.
Exactly. It's perfect. Okay, well, ladies and gents, welcome to the Ground Floor podcast. I'm here with David Kabwa for the second time.
Yes, indeed. This is the first. I was the first guest on this show. I am the first guest in 2021. I am the first guest with this new intro. I am the first guest to be a two-time guest on this show. Come on, somebody. That's exciting.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're talking about the intro. I want to talk about the intro. So, the intro has a video version and an audio version. So, it doesn't matter where you've been listening or watching or whatever. You would have seen the new intro. And I just want to take a second, say thank you to my friend Heinrich in Australia.
Shout out to Heinrich.
Shout out to Heinrich and his brother Rualt. Who are in a band, and the two of them, you know, when I needed an intro, I knew exactly who to call, and they hooked me up in about 24 hours. I had a really rocking guitar intro. It's really good.
It's a proper intro.
I'm extremely impressed.
Yeah.
So yes, shout out to them, and Heinrich, if you are watching, thank you for that. So yeah, David, welcome back.
I appreciate that. It's good to be back. Off the air, we were speaking about this, and I'm very impressed by how far the Ground Floor has come. I'm looking at the equipment, and there's a lot of development, much better. I was telling you, I don't even want to touch anything because it looks very, very expensive. But also the caliber of guests that you've had, I think, really speaks to the growth of the channel and the platform. Still impressed you got individuals such as Nazput and Lexi and so forth. And it excites me to have been a part of such an auspicious undertaking. So I'm grateful.
No, it's awesome. I'm looking forward to it because this is something that's quite important to me, and it's something I've been working on for a long time. I'm a really strong believer of that idea about you become the average of the people you surround yourself with. You know, so if you're surrounding yourself with people who haven't got much drive, people who are sort of doing the same thing over and over again, and who are limiting themselves, in their potentials, you will only ever be as great as the people who you surround yourself with. So, over the past few months especially, I've been trying very hard to make sure that I'm getting contact with and forming relationships with people who are, I don't want to say like high performers, but people who have a lot of potential to be, really, really fantastic. I've now just a couple days ago, I've been getting into stock trading,
Right,
day trading on the JSE for the past little bit less than a year now, probably about 10 months or whatever. And now recently, I thought I was getting pretty good at it. I thought I was starting to figure out what was going on. And then recently I went on the meme page. I said, listen, if there's anyone who is trading in stocks, let me know. Let's make a little WhatsApp group and let's talk about it. And instantly, these guys start telling their stories about how they go about their trading. And I realize, I mean, they are so much better than me. It's like, these are people my age who have been trading since they were in high school. And I mean, they've forgotten more about trading than I know right now.
It's ambition right there.
And at first I felt a little bit shit about it. You know, I was thinking like, I feel like maybe I'm not as far along as I thought I was, or maybe I'm progressing too slowly. But then the second thing that popped into my head was, well, thank goodness I found that out now, as opposed to finding this out 5 years down the line or whatever. Thank goodness that I'm now in this group where we share news, we share ideas. Thank goodness I'm on this group with these people who are so much smarter than I am, because hopefully some of that will rub off, you know, over time. And I feel like that's how it works. So, I mean, for the two of us, I think it's a unique relationship, because I feel like both of us have really big plans for our futures. And I also feel like those two plans have a lot of opportunity to intertwine, and you know, we're going to have many opportunities to help one another up in different things. So I'm always excited to talk to you. I'm always excited to see you.
I share the same sentiment. You know, you are basically describing my motto. And if you have ever heard me speak any speech that I am ever given the opportunity to address an audience, there is one thing that I always say. And it gives me great joy whenever I have the opportunity to say this. And what I'm about to say, I believe you know. I believe you realize. I believe you are familiar. And I believe you are aware. And that touches into what you were saying about ambition. I always maintain the firm belief that we have the capacity and we have the capability to loosen the shackles of mediocrity that have bound so many to complacency. So to reword what you said, I share the same sentiments. I am worried about being surrounded by complacency, by a lack of ambition, because like you said, it really does rub off on you. So yeah, no, it's good to be here. It's good to be back, and I look forward to this conversation. The thing I love about podcast, we've been talking for probably like 30 minutes now, and we just started, so this is very exciting.
I found that helps.
It does.
In the podcast I've done over the past few months, I've picked up on a few little tips and tricks and things to make sure you have a good podcast and the conversation flows well,
Right?
And you know, that sort of thing. And one of the important things is don't just, hi, how are you doing? Thanks for coming. Sit down. Okay, let's start. It doesn't work that way, because you just don't get the flow.
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't work. So, David Kabwa, it's something I want to talk to you about, and it's on everyone's lips right now. The vaccine.
Yes.
Will you be taking it?
I love this. Straight into it. Yes, the COVID vaccine, I think, has everyone very, very worried. Both those who will be taking it and those who will not. In my opinion, I think it's very important that in our country we get to a stage where there is herd immunity. And I really think that's one of the most important ways to beat the ongoing pandemic. To answer your question, no. And the reason for that is because I am very much a proponent of familiarizing myself a lot more. There is a lot of information, a lot of misinformation, a lot of relevant information, and a lot of incomplete information. And the reason why that is a cause for concern is because you're aware there's the Pfizer vaccine, there's the Mrna vaccine. There's a lot of misinformation about vaccine from India is different from a vaccine from this country, and so on and so forth. To date, I have been following up on the rolling out plan for anyone who has or shares the same apprehension. My view is that it's always better to be safe than sorry. Which is why my encouragement would be that should you feel comfortable, take the vaccine. If you feel uncomfortable, address exactly what makes you feel uncomfortable. Ask yourself, why is it that I feel uncomfortable? Look at those facsimiles, address them head on, And if you still feel uncomfortable, then don't. The one thing I'm grateful for is that it is optional. I do think a vaccine is necessary. In relation to the current timeline, I still would like to furnish myself with more information.
I actually disagree with you, because I'll definitely be taking the vaccine, and I would turn your reasoning on its head with
Right.
regards to rather be safe than sorry. That I would say that as a reason for taking the vaccine. I feel like a lot of the time, when especially with regards to vaccines and the anti-vax movement and that sort of thing, a lot of it has to do with vaccines are not something people understand very well. Have you done a lot of research about how the vaccine works and how it's made and so on?
About the current COVID vaccine?
Well, all of them. I think there's 11 or 12 different ones right now. Do you know how they work?
Yes, indeed. Just quickly on a point you touched on in relation to the anti-vax movement. I think the anti-vax movement is completely lacking in empirical substance. There's no positive data to support anything that has been purported in that regard. My modus operandi is always vaccines are important and it's important to take them. What's happening in this instance is we're in a very unique situation where there are more alternatives on the table, which is why, going back to you flipping the point, I will flip it back. The question then becomes, if you are taking a vaccine, which one are you taking and why are you going to take it? And again, I encourage what you were doing, because you are an individual who has sat down, who has read up for themselves, who has familiarized themselves, and who is looking to ensure not only your safety, but the safety of others, which is something that I will always advocate for. The crux of what I'm saying is, do not simply believe without having done your own research. I think that is extremely dangerous, and I also think it is one of the reasons why there is such great apprehension. We see a video, we see a tweet, we see a post, and we just react. We do not take the time to sit ourselves and familiarize ourselves. When you asked me the question, it was a question in the present tense, which is why that answer is no. I am still very much open-minded and still have a lot of reading up to do.
Right. So let me make it a little bit easier for you. So you've got a couple of different options when it comes to the vaccine, right? So there is basically 3 types of vaccines right now available for the coronavirus. You get the traditional vaccine, the RNA vaccine, and the mRNA vaccine. Now, the mRNA vaccine is like the cutting edge technology of vaccine. So I'll explain each one. The traditional vaccine is the type of vaccine that we've used for many years, and basically what that is we take a weakened version or a dead version of a virus, and we then inject that into a person. And since it's such a weak version, their body can their body can easily destroy it, and the body sort of it's kind of like it sees something, it learns how to defeat it, and then when it sees it again, it doesn't have to learn again. It already knows how to do it. So that way your immune system can protect you before the virus does damage. So that's the traditional vaccine, and I think there are 3 available right now. Then you get the RNA vaccines. So now the RNA vaccine is where they don't take a dead version of the virus, they take a certain aspect of the virus. So for the coronavirus, Johnson & Johnson is a company that has a RNA vaccine available. And basically what they do is the coronavirus has a protein. It's called a spike protein. And what that protein does is it allows the virus to bind with your cells. So they've isolated that one protein, because without that protein, the virus wouldn't work. They take that protein, they inject that protein into you. It doesn't, it's not a virus, it can't make you sick, but your body sees that protein as an outside force. It then destroys that protein, learns how to destroy it. So when the coronavirus enters your system, then the body attacks that protein, and suddenly the virus is useless because it can't use its protein to enter your bloodstream. Then you've got the most advanced virus, or most advanced vaccine, and this is the one that was developed by Dr. Fauci and all those people working in the US administration, those scientists. This is the one that Pfizer and Moderna are selling. This is an mRNA vaccine. So in this case, in an mRNA vaccine, the virus isn't involved in any step of the process. There's no part of a virus that's going into you. What is going into you is a small strand of, think of it like an instruction. So our body, the way that our cells know what to do is they've got these little strands that are instructions that say, when you're a child growing in the womb, these instructions say, grow a leg here, grow an arm here, develop the lungs this way, blah, blah, blah. And when you're an adult, these instructions say, produce these hormones, destroy this, regulate things like that. So what they inject into you is an instruction to your cells that says, produce the spike protein. So now it's telling your own body to produce in-house the same protein that the coronavirus uses to infect people. So your body will then, and also it's been developed, it's so smart, they've developed it in such a way that this instruction is self-replicating. So they send in the instruction once and it goes everywhere. And it tells your body to produce this protein. Your body produces the protein, and then the immune system sees the protein. It learns how to flush it out of your system, and game over for that protein, and thus for the virus. So, I've done quite a bit of research on this, and I see a lot on social media with regards to the anti-vax movement, and so on. And the big thing that people are obviously afraid of is extreme allergic reactions. Right. Because what could happen is they could inject you with a vaccine, you could have this extreme allergic reaction that then results in all sorts of terrible side effects. So right now, with the coronavirus vaccine in Norway is sort of on the forefront of this whole thing. They have thus far vaccinated almost 2 million people, just a smidge under 2 million. And the amount of people who have had allergic reactions are 23, if I'm not mistaken. So 23 out of about 2 million. So if you were to go work those numbers down, that is the odds of...
Extremely minuscule.
That is probably 10 or 100 times less likely than you being hit by a car every time you drive to work. It's much less likely than a condom breaking, and people take that chance all the time. And, it's a very, very minuscule chance. And also something I noticed, which I read about just today, was that the people who had extreme allergic effects were very old, like 80 plus.
Right.
So, what this tells us is that it's sort of, if your body is very frail already, injecting a vaccine, and your body now, on top of barely being able to keep you alive, now your body has to learn something new. It might not be able to handle it as well. But for, 99.99% of the population, which includes everyone listening to this podcast,
right,
your body would definitely, or almost definitely, be able to handle these instructions. So it depends how skeptical you are of science, which of the vaccines you want to take. Because if you want to be that person who says you don't trust modern science or modern medicine, because, there's a lot of people who believe in New World Order and all these. Exactly. So if you want to be that person, then you should probably take the old-fashioned vaccine, the one we've been using for many, many years, since the turn of the century, so last century. So it's if you want to do that, and then obviously you get increasing levels of complexity when it comes to these sorts of things. So when all this news broke and the vaccine started becoming something that people were discussing, I really took it upon myself to not engage in any arguments with anyone before I really could know what I was talking about and make sure that I had an informed opinion.
See, this is what I like. We really need more of this. I want to quickly touch on so many things I want to touch on. Right, so I suppose I'll start with sort of the end goal. The end goal being that we build an immunity that we are able to move without threat of this disease, this virus, this pandemic. And essentially, all three of the mechanisms you described build the body's tolerance, build the body's immunity, increasing white blood cells. It can be summarized as saying in some form or fashion, they adjust the homeostasis that takes place within the body so that when the balancing occurs, that the body is better equipped to expel the foreign entities, that being the virus in this instance. And those are undisputable facts. The thing I like about what you have outlined is you have stuck to the facts. For example, let's say I'm sitting here and I'm a skeptic. Hearing such information puts people at ease. And I believe that those who are listening to this is putting them at ease as well. And what we need is more of these engagements, because we are in a funny age where we no longer speak referencing facts. And it's the strangest thing. For example, you touched on the New World Order. A lot of the apprehension is that the virus is the new 666. You're getting microchips planted in you and everything of that sort. And I sit and I'm getting information from all sides. Those who are skeptical, those who are terrified, those who are scientific, those who are non-scientific. And the unfortunate reality is that we are simply speaking from our points of view. And if my facts don't align with my opinions, or if your facts disagree with my reality, then I am unwilling to accept it. And this is where it gets into very nuanced territory. You can describe it as relativity. What's true for me is true for me, what's true for you is true for you. But what if my truth says your truth is a lie? And that is a very, very, very crucial point to be touched on. In relation to which option I think would put me the most at ease, I think it most definitely has to be the one that has been supported by the most empirical data. And I haven't done as much research as you. As I have mentioned, right now I wouldn't. I still think it's important. The more I look into it, the more I lean in towards it. So what I've been following up on is a lot of the CDC guidelines. I've used, as you've mentioned, it's Fauci and a lot of the experts within his corner. And that is sort of how I view things. I want to be as objective as possible and look at facts as objectively as possible. I do want to kind of flip the script and sort of hear from you. You know, you deal with a lot of media, a lot of engagements on a more regular basis. You see posts, you see comments, you see engagements and everything of that sort. When you look at the ratio of skepticism versus non-skepticism, based on your experience, how much would you say is rooted in factual reality and how much is simply opinion-based?
So, I mean, I don't even need to do the research on that or give my own opinion. For example, there's a statistic now that's been published. Do you know what percentage of the South African population has said they will take a COVID vaccine?
I believe it was 60.
It's 52.
52.
52.
Okay.
In 52 is low.
It's extremely
very low. And 52 is extremely low. So
especially for a member state in WHO, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean it's extremely low. So it can be frustrating, I think, but I don't engage with that. I don't argue with people online. That's something which I find it's a waste of time.
It's an absolute waste of time.
Yeah.
When you go and you check any of my social media, like many comments I don't even acknowledge.
Post and ghost, you got to do. That's what they say.
Yeah.
It's something I caught myself doing in the early days, as if this isn't still the early days, but in the earlier days of the podcast.
Yeah.
Post the podcast and check. We're checking the downloads.
Oh, that is toxic.
Oh, it's not good.
It's very toxic.
Because it makes you feel it makes you feel, I think especially it makes you pivot what you want to do or how you are going to go about things away from what you want to do and more towards what's getting the most clicks and what's getting the most likes. And I mean, it's part of this polarizing effect that social media has, is because social media rewards extremism. Social media doesn't reward the centralist in the same way that it rewards someone on the far left or the far right, or someone who's aggressively anti-vax, or someone who's extremely liberal, or whatever the case may be. You get this constant loop of feedback. Because if I'm now someone who believes in, let's say that non-binary genders should be mentioned and represented at every level of everything. So, for example, the University of Pretoria has now said they're going to introduce these non-binary things on forms.
Yes.
I don't know if you read the comments about that. I mean, there were half of comments saying, hooray, this is a step in the right direction. There's another half of comments saying, this is bullshit. Can we please focus on something important? And, the people who were in the middle of the spectrum just saw it, scrolled by, or maybe they liked it, or they didn't engage with it. If you're someone who leans more towards one side or more towards the other, you are more likely to engage and to say, yes, this is great, or no, this is bad, and thus you start getting feedback immediately on your opinions. And the feedback from people who agree with you will always be great. The feedback from people who disagree with you will always be really terrible. And thus you start to develop this idea that everyone who does not agree with me is terrible. And everyone who's not as on my side as I am is terrible. And I think it's ridiculous, because you got to look at things on a spectrum. When it comes to decisions and the way you feel about things. I don't think there's a quote from Guardians of the Galaxy where he says something. So it's toward the end of a movie, and Star-Lord, and they've done everything, and they now want to steal their ship back from Xandar or something like that. They steal their ship back to help them in this battle. And now the people of Xandar who took their ship in the first place are now kind of balancing whether or not they should help. Because the threat is a threat to Xandar as well. But they don't like the Guardians of the Galaxy because they're all criminals. But they now need to decide to help. So this guy, he's a comedian and a comedic actor. He comes in and he's playing this officer. And he says to the woman, he reads this note that Star-Lord has written from them, where he says something like, I can't remember the line, it's gonna kill me, but the catchphrase is, I'm not 100% a dick.
I remember that.
Yeah, and the officer says to the captain or whatever, he says, or she says to him, do you believe that? And he says, well, ma'am, I don't think anyone's 100% a dick. And that's, it's the joke, and it's also true. Nobody is 100% bad. Also, nobody agrees with anything 100%. Like you can't agree with something with every single part of you, or else you're just I want to say sheep. If you agree with something 100%, you lose your ability and your privilege to be able to look at that thing critically.
Exactly.
So
it also creates a very dangerous echo chamber. And I'm glad you brought this up, because this was sort of where I was looking to go in terms of the conversation with vaccinations. I don't think vaccinations are anything to be feared. My belief is always make sure you've read up as you have, because that puts you at ease, puts people around you at ease. Now, the echo chamber, I think a good example would be what's happening in the US. I'm angry, I post this, I post that, algorithms pick it up, so they give me more of what I like. And now it gets to a point where everything on my feed supports my own opinions. And I get to a point where I have lost my grip with reality, and this happens on both sides. And as you mentioned, with centrists, it is very interesting with centrists, I have seen, because it is often, as you mentioned, those who do not engage. because in many instances there is no need to engage. So in that particular instance, you'll find very interesting dichotomies where an individual will be, for example, pro gender non-conforming policies, but at the same time be misogynist, and these wildly contradictory kind of perspectives. But the point that I think is important is that life is a matter of decision. You need to make the choice, but it is only beneficial to all within your immediate space when the choice you have made is a proactive choice, but more importantly, an informed decision. Everyone's talking about what's happening in the US. And I've been getting a lot of messages about this as well. You know, if you were sitting there now, if you were in the seat of government, what would your thoughts be? How would you view it? How would you react to it? What is your 2 cents? And my fear has sort of been, not so much a fear, but my concern has sort of been realized in what we have seen. It's basically a textbook example of I believe what I want to the extreme, to the point where things go wrong. For example, Donald Trump. I disagree with the man fundamentally. Honestly, I disagree with Joe Biden also. Like you mentioned, it's difficult because you're essentially choosing the lesser of two quote unquote difficult choices. When I look at Trump, I don't think he was fairly covered by the media. The man was nominated for a Nobel Prize. It did not make the news. I disagree with the man. I think he's foolish. I think he's very much bigoted. And with recent events, it seems more and more people are coming to the same epiphany. And then I look at, for example, Joe Biden. If you look at President Obama and his administration, Obama was very much a centrist. If you look at Biden's voting record, he was very much a centrist. He was an experienced centrist, which is why Obama took him and put him on the same ticket, because he balanced the ticket, an experienced centrist. Now you have an experienced centrist in a party that is described as becoming more progressive. And becoming more progressive essentially entails becoming more left-leaning. So I'm very curious to see how that is going to sort of materialize, because a lot of the rhetoric has not fit past voting bases.
That, I mean, it's so perfect. It almost is a joke. The term left-leaning or right-leaning, it makes perfect sense, because if you lean too far in one direction, you fall. You lose your balance and you fall over. So, I mean, obviously I don't live in the US. And I chatted to Joseph Haynes a few weeks ago, who does live in the US. He was one of the Black Lives Matter protesters, hardcore leftist.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to say sitting here, but I would love to imagine that if I did live there, I would not be the person who votes for the same side every time.
Right.
You know, you'd want to be the person who votes based on what you think the country needs just then, you know, as opposed to saying, I'm a right-wing, my dad was right-wing, my grandpa was right-wing, I will vote right-wing till I die, and my kids better vote right-wing too, because if this country goes to the liberals, it'll, you know, something like that I think is ridiculous. You need to make a decision for yourself every election and say, okay, cool, this is where our economy's at right now. So for example, let's look at the USA. I think Joe Biden was the right choice. And I think the reason why he was a right choice, and I would have voted for him too, is because if I were in the US right now and I were looking at the political situation in the country, I would say, you know what? This country's a joke. Like over the past 4 years, we've become a joke globally because our leader is this extreme character. And, you know, there are some aspects that have suffered for it. So, for example, this massive rise in civil conflicts and all that sort of stuff, and the massive drop in respect from the rest of the world. I mean, I don't know anyone who still thinks America is just the place to be anymore. It's gone now, and it took about 4 years for that idea to crumble.
Right.
So if I were in the US right now, I would be saying, right, whether I agree with Biden or not, he's a normal person.
He's a sane human being.
He's not going to go tweet something ridiculous. He's just
his cognitive faculties.
he looks like a functioning adult, normal person.
Yeah.
And whether you think he's the greatest politician to ever have lived or not, he's a normal guy. And he's not going to go to war with North Korea because he insulted them. He's not going to do something ridiculous. And this is the kind of thing that, Trump was people were very afraid he would do.
Exactly.
So, that's a decision I would have made as well.
But to extrapolate on that, the way I view it, yes, if I was a US citizen, I would have voted Biden as well. But the thing that I found very interesting about this election is that it only became a pro-Biden election in the latter stages. Before that, it was an anti-Trump election. Essentially, the massive argument, the entire first 2 quarters, I would say, of the election is Biden is better than Trump. And I found this very, very odd because I went back and I watched a few of the previous Democratic National Conventions. And there what you would witness is a lot of conviction, a lot of confidence. This person is the best person to lead our country, X, Y, Z. When I was watching the Democratic National Convention this year, the rhetoric was very much, Joe Biden is a decent man. And I look at the comparisons and it hasn't been, he inspires me, he motivates me, he's this, he's that. It's that, no, we believe he can beat Trump. And he also possesses his thinking, his mind. He is there, he is switched on. He is able to lead. More so, he is able to lead more than Trump. So, as you have stated, it is a situation where my viewpoint has always been it should be the best person. The reason why I ran as an independent in both of my campaigns was because I genuinely believed I was the best person for the job. When we were appointing judges to the bench of the tribunal, my biggest argument sitting in that room with colleagues is I do not want this person there if this person is not the best. I'm not one for balancing this and balancing that. What I want to see is the person whom we are putting in this space the best person to operate within that space. And my hope is that this is what we can strive towards. And you touched on this. I can't remember who you were interviewing, but you proposed an entirely new governmental system.
I was talking to Kwena.
Was
Yes.
it Kwena?
In fact, when I was talking to Kwena, it was on the day that the US election results were supposed to be made available. They turned out only coming through the next day. But we were sitting at his dining room table, chatting with the old equipment,
Right.
still talking, and behind him, across his shoulder, I could see on the TV,
Right.
it was on CNN, the news coming through about the election and so on. But yeah, I did propose a new system of government. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I was very fascinated. By the proposal. I echo very similar sentiments, just a few points of departure here and there. And it really, it makes me sort of very hopeful for the future. When I look at the electoral reform that is to come in South Africa, my hope is that we as a country can move towards more objectivism. I think we need to get to a point where we do not vote for a color, we do not vote for a t-shirt. The current system, we are voting for ideologies, but the issue is that the person whom is supposed to represent that ideology, there is no way of guaranteeing that they will represent that ideology because they have simply adopted it by virtue of being a proxy of the entity, of the party that they represent. So it's a song I will always sing. If you believe this party is what is best for the country, I will tell you vote for that party. If you do not, I will tell you do not. And it's my hope that, again, all of this coming back to what we started speaking about, that we can really think for ourselves, that we can furnish ourselves with as much information as possible, and that we can really move into a space where our considerations are our considerations and not simply echo chambers of what is reverberating around us.
I think something that's so dangerous is seeing a headline or hearing something and immediately being 100% on board. That is what I am, I'm on that side.
Right.
I don't think that's safe. I want to pivot this a little bit away from politics just for a moment. Have you heard what's been going on with DJ Fresh the past 2 or 3 days? So DJ Fresh is one of the guys. He was at.
I think we all know DJ.
Yeah, he was at Metro FM. I think he moved over to 947. And before I started listening to podcasts in the mornings, I was listening to the Breakfast Show, and he was there. And the whole thing. I got to know him over time. And I mean, obviously, on radio, you're not going to give 100% of who you are. You have a job to do. You have to be positive. You have to be nice. You have to be upbeat. And with that in mind, I still think he came across as a pretty cool guy.
Right.
But anyway, the point is, there's now been this allegation, this big thing. So last year, there was an allegation against DJ Fresh that he had raped a woman. Okay, so she put out this allegation, and it was dismissed. It was like it was disproven, and it was proven that it wasn't true. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a whole she got a court order that she wasn't allowed to say that anymore because it was defamation and it just wasn't true, and they proved that it wasn't true. So now fast forward a year, and now there's a girl. I'm surprised you don't know about this already. A University of Pretoria student who was second year when this happened. It was a few years ago. I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago. So she was a second year student at Tux, and she apparently went to a club or a place that I've never heard of. Can't remember the name. It's got like a short little name. She went to this place, and apparently she alleged in this tweet that DJ Fresh and Euphonic, who's also a DJ, drugged her and raped her. And she was basically saying, how could, are you ever going to admit it or whatever in this tweet? So this made the news, and immediately Fresh and Euphonic said, this is not true at all. And, they feel something they said, which I thought was quite weighty, was they said that something they feel, or at least Fresh said, something he feels is so terrible is when people make false rape accusations, it takes so much away from real rape accusations. Because it's like, if you get 5 people who haven't been raped, they say they were raped by some famous person in order to get media attention or money or whatever, and now there's a 6th person who actually has been sexually abused by someone or raped by someone, they won't be taken nearly as seriously, just because it's sort of like the boy who cried wolf and so on. So women's now made this allegation, they've denied it, and immediately it's divided people. And if you go read the comments, there are a lot of people who say, I listen to Fresh every morning. There's no way he could have done this. This could not have happened. It's impossible. It didn't happen. This woman just wants attention. Then there's another side, which is the believe the victim type narrative, who says we should definitely believe this woman. Fresh should be fired immediately. Euphonic should be fired immediately. We cannot have this in our country, and an example should be made and all that. And there's been no investigation yet. There's been nothing. It's just allegation and response. So now 947 I don't know if it was the DJ's decision or if it was 947 who said so, but they've now stepped down until this is sorted out or whatever. They're not going to be on the air anymore. And I think it'll be quite interesting starting tomorrow to actually hear if the other presenters on 947, acknowledge this at all or talk about it at all, or if they sound upset, or I don't know, how it's going to go. But I don't know if this woman is lying or not. Her real name hasn't come out. Nothing about the investigation has come out. The only thing that we know right now are the details of her tweet and the fact that the DJs have denied it.
Right.
So now my first response, and I'm sure the response of most people, is to say, well, let's wait for more information. Let's find out what's going on before we make any rash decisions, and before we say we hate someone, or before we fire people or ruin people's lives, or before we disregard this woman, or before we say that she is something which she might not be. Let's get more information. But that's not what you see on social media.
Right.
Because if you go onto these, if you go onto Facebook and you see the article and you click the comments, the top comments are the ones that have the most likes. And the ones that have the most likes is not the comment from someone that says, let's be reasonable. The top comment is the one saying, they should fire Fresh immediately. This is ridiculous. And then the second top one will be, this is ridiculous, that woman just wants attention, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, where are these people getting this information? I did the research after I read this article. I thought, this is crazy. Let me go read this. Let me go read up. I read every article that was written about this. There was no more information, but people had made solid, hard decisions based on very little information. And to bring this back to politics, I think that that's something that we see in voting patterns all the time. And we see it in South Africa. There are many EFF supporters who vote EFF because they believe that the DA, for example, would bring apartheid back.
Right.
It was something that a politician said a couple of years ago. They said, if the DA takes power, apartheid's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy. That's 2 seconds of rational thought. And you can realize that even if the DA was like a Nazi party, the rest of the world would never allow that to happen. We're not in, it's not like China. China can do whatever the hell they want and they can get away with it. We're not China. If we did something bad, we'd be invaded by the US, to get control of our natural resources. And then also under the, we're coming to liberate the people or whatever.
No, it's so true what you're saying. And I like the example you gave, because, social justice and social activism is at an all-time high. And it is a space where we really have the proclivity to jump on one bandwagon and jump on another bandwagon. And what you touched on pertaining to this current allegation that's happening, I think I want to give a similar example. The Dross case that we were all aware of. Oftentimes it goes beyond the realm of speculation and investigation. When I look at the Dross case, that was a fact. This man had raped a child. As a country, we were disgusted. When I think about it, I am still disgusted. And then I sit and I go back to that time and I realize that the media coverage was very limited. They did not give the name of the perpetrator. They did not allow airtime. They did not publish the family's names as widely as other cases. And I realized from following the court case, the reason for this was because, I can stand in court, and if I'm accused, I can say, I have already been through the People's Court. I've been through a kangaroo court, and now those who are seeking social justice can often become those that prevent justice itself. And it's a pendulum that really swings both ways. Even in the conversation that we are having right now, you and I are two heterosexual cisgender males. So in the eyes of many, us as men, we are regarded as the perpetrators.
Yeah, Jim Jeffries, I think it was him. He said in a comedy special, he was talking about offense and cancel culture and so on, and he says, I am a white, straight male. That's a triple flush.
That's true. That is very true.
I mean, it's 100 years ago, a white straight male was the best thing to be. Today, it's a little bit different, and a lot of people would argue about if it's still the best thing to be. But you're right. You sort of need to see your perspective.
Indeed, and I always sit and I try to take a step back and look at it from that perspective, because when I look at a lot of the anger, in many instances the anger is misplaced, but it is not unfounded. There is some semblance of validity to a lot of the anger that we see, and I think the best thing that can be done by individuals who are looking to ensure that the information is what we deal with as opposed to actual opinions, is a larger scale of engagement. But I think engagement should come where it will be relevant. For example, if there are 50,000 people yelling at each other on Twitter, my view is that to try and enter such a space and try to solicit facts on both sides is a counteractive exercise. However, there have often been spaces of dialogue where it would be beneficial to have individuals who are of the mind of ensuring that we have constructive engagements. But there's even sort of a sense of apathy towards that. And it's unfortunate in that we are in a space where most of us are starting to think, you know what, I could say something, but people have their opinions, so it won't matter. To be in the center does not mean that one is unopinionated. It simply means that one wants to be sure of the facts behind their opinions before they give them. And I think it's always encourageable to try and share that more. And I want to give a very kind of, I'm going to say complex, a very complex kind of example. There was a day where I was at a red carpet event, and there was a dude, I don't know the dude, and has the most flamboyant suit I have ever seen in my life. Never did I think that pink and purple on a suit would look good together, but it did. So he approaches me and he says, "Man, you are ugly." I said, "Okay, well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me." He says, "Do you not realize that I'm insulting you?" And I said, "Okay, well, you took the time to speak to me, which means you must value my presence, and I'm grateful for that." He says, "Man, I hate you." And I say, "Well, hate is a strong emotion, so actually what you are saying is you feel strongly about me." And the man was so diffused that he legit just up and left. Now, he left his seat, and they ended up giving me his seat. Next thing, I'm sitting next to the speaker of the Lok Sabha, who's the third most powerful person in India. And, I started to engage and so on and so forth. So some pictures came out and, people started asking me, how did you end up with that seat? And I'm like, someone whose opinion differed from mine gave me the seat. And he asked, "Well, how did you address that?" And I said, "Well, I took the time to listen, took the time to give my own thoughts, and essentially what I did was stated facts. Hate is a strong emotion. You are taking the time to speak to me even if you are insulting me. And although you would meet me with negativity, if I do not reciprocate that, then you may not have gotten anything constructive out of it, but the engagement in and of itself can become constructive. And I think we need more of that."
I agree with you. So, David, I know I said before that I don't want to talk about university too much, but I want to pivot completely to something entirely different. And there's a lot of people who have asked me, about this. And I think that you're someone who's uniquely equipped to answer this question. So there's a lot of students in South Africa. I'm talking about...
GPS signal lost.
What the hell was that? Is that your phone?
I think that was my phone. Apologies. I thought it was off.
Right. So anyway, as I was saying, there's a lot of students in South Africa, both matrics and first year, second year, blah blah blah, all across the university's timeline, spectrum, whatever you want to call it, who are confused and who are worried about their future at the university. So, for example, this year, 2021, should be my final year. I am unsure if I will see campus again for graduation. I mean, obviously we've had all this news about the vaccines rolling out, which is fantastic, but then we also have the numbers, which are looking worse than ever. So, there's just no way of knowing how things are going to go. And then you've also got matrics who've only just now, or they haven't yet. I think they're only getting their matric results in like mid-Feb or something ridiculous like that. And then there's, worries about, is this going to be delayed or whatever the case may be. And I wanted to ask you, with all your experience and, with all the people you've spoken to in this space about this topic, what does the future of a student look like, both a matric student who's trying to go to university and a university student who's trying to get into the next year? What does next year look like for a student like me?
I appreciate that, and I think it is a question that so many are asking. It goes beyond students, parents and families in and of themselves we're all wondering this. First of all, things will not be as they were previously. Psychologically, there's been a massive shift. And even if we get to a point where we're back on campus and we are having our physical engagements, taking that extended amount of time, being isolated from one another will have its toll. And there's a lot that we have learned, and there's a lot that we may have to readjust to once we enter back into the space. One thing that I can say is that the future, in my opinion, does look very bright, and I remain very, very hopeful. And the reason for this is because of the various contingencies that have been put in place. For example, if I were to touch on the University of Pretoria, there are still plans being made for a 2021 graduation for the students who could not have a graduation last year. Date we're looking at is around about May. If the numbers allow, then it will most likely happen. If the numbers do not allow, then it will not happen. What is happening within the space is preparations are being made. The difficulty we have as students is that at this time we are in the dark. So it is difficult to find a path forward when you are reaching around in the dark. Therefore, what is most important at this time, I'll start with students who are prospective students, those in grade 11, those who are in matric, those who do not know what the future will hold, those who are waiting for their results, those who are excited for the campus life but may have to spend an extended amount of time online. It is important that we begin by appreciating the fact that we are able to progress. There has been a stage where one of the biggest concerns is that things would stop completely. The one absolute truth about life is that it does have to go on, and it will go on. I will not mince my words. It will not be easy. It is going to be very challenging. It is going to be very difficult. But it is important that we take heart, we grit our teeth, and we continue to move forward. There will be problems along the way. There will be misappropriations, but it's important that we speak up about it, we identify them, and we move forward. So for example, I am apprehensive as a matric student until I get my results. Once I have my results, my apprehension disappears. So there will come a time where everything has been properly delineated, it's been put in place, everything is clear. When we have that clarity, we will be able to move forward in a much better capacity. For students, those of us who are still in the dark, for many of us, we do not know, will NSFAS be funding private accommodations this year? Many of us are trying to submit contracts and we send it by post and we don't know if the post office has even delivered it. And we can't follow up because universities can only receive post in many instances through the post office. There are those of us who wonder, will we finish university without the university experience, without the experiential learning that is very, very critical to our development as young people. The way that I look at it is that we are developing differently. We have shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that we can function while we are separated. We are able to perform, and we have shown the ability to adapt. And as the future begins to unfold and as it continues to unfold, it is important to realize that the adaptability will go both ways. We might be mentally prepared to spend the whole year online. And one thing I saw last year was there were massive cries to come back to campus. And then there were certain degrees and programs that required physical examinations. And for many of us, when we got back to campus, we just wanted out. So we become used to a particular way of doing things, and then it gets flipped on its head and we have to get used to it as well. So what is happening right now is we are not used to this, and we are not used to it because we do not want it, and we do not want it because it is not favorable. But the fact is we have to move forward, and we will. Not only will we do that, but we will do it successfully. So for example, a student like you, final year student, I take solace in the fact that you're going to finish, and you're going to finish well. It will not be as ideal as you may have hoped. We might come back in June, we might not come back in June, but you are still within the space, and I think it's important that we make the best of the space while we are there.
Okay, so I mean, let's just get down to the meat of it, and let's ask some straight questions. And if you know the answer, you can tell me what the answer is, and if you don't know what the answer is, you can tell me what you think.
Right.
So, will 2021 university for first year students, will that orientation week on campus where they see the campus, is that happening?
No.
Okay. Is university going to be online for everyone from the start?
From the start, yes. First quarter is online.
Okay. Is there currently, so first quarter. So there's currently a plan for the university to be back on campus by second quarter?
Yes. So it depends on what the numbers look like.
Okay, I see. So do you think that, how likely do you think it is that we're going to get back on campus? I mean, now with your knowledge of the numbers, with your knowledge of the vaccine and how effective it is, blah, 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 all that stuff, what do you think?
I don't think we'll be back on campus this quarter, not this quarter, this semester. Just if I'm to be perfectly honest and pragmatic about it. I am hopeful for the second quarter because I have seen a lot of developments, and we have shown that we can safely engage on campus. So my expectation at this stage is that it will most likely be second semester if we return to campus. And it's just up to us as a country and a community to ensure that we all chip in so that we can beat the virus sooner rather than later.
I see. Okay, so another question I want to ask, when it comes to students who are experiencing difficulty, completing their degrees in their hometowns, do you think that it's a good idea for them to move to Hatfield and stay in student accommodation despite the fact that they are not sure about whether they're going to receive any funds for that?
You're referring to private accommodations?
Yes.
Right. At this stage, I would not make any decisions until anything has been finalized. So no, I would not advise students to move back to their private accommodations until NSFAS has released their guidelines. In this week, the South African Union of Students has been engaging with the Ministry of Higher Education. My expectation is that they will be engaging SRCs in the coming weeks. And from every single student leader I've spoken to, it's an absolute priority issue. What we need to avoid is a situation where, let's speak about worst case scenario. So worst case scenario, you move back to your private accommodation, lockdown levels increase. You might be in a situation where you have to go home. Afterwards, and this fuss comes out and says, we will not be funding this. Now you have to deal with the debt that you've incurred for that particular period, which adds an additional stress onto not only yourself, but your family. And it is an extremely difficult time. but as far as possible, we need to ensure that as a student community, we do not make it more difficult than it is.
Okay. I've heard the phrase before, back when I was still studying BCom law. Someone said to me, BCom law is a group project. And what they meant by that was that nobody could ever do BCom law on their own. There will always be things that you don't understand, and you will need your peers to explain that to you. Along with that, there will be projects and things that you cannot do alone. You will need the input of others in order to figure out exactly what the best strategy is to go about it. So BCom law is a difficult degree, and there are many degrees like it at the university that could be referred to as group projects. How has the university made sure that for people who are first years, who are extremely unfamiliar with faculties and the way that faculties work and what they expect of the students, how are students going to be expected to complete these same degrees with these same requirements, but now without the help of a community around them? Have there been changes made to these curriculums and changes made to the way they are presented? Or, is it every student for themselves?
Well, there have been pedagogical adjustments. And while I was in the SRC, this was something that I fought for very, very earnestly. So to summarize, the outcome has been that now telephonic tutoring is available, meaning that with no cost to you as a student, you will have tutors who will be available to assist you in your particular focus area. In relation to faculty student advisors, they have since been briefed and their ranks have been bolstered. And what that means is they are now a lot more equipped to be able to engage students online. And by this I mean working through emails and phone calls as opposed to the physical consultations, and going as far as setting up virtual meetings. We also got a fund from the Dell Foundation, the laptops, and this particular fund was used to get a psychiatrist. So we now have a psychiatrist in addition to the psychologists that are available, but also more counselors who are available, so that both academically, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of mental health, and in terms of understanding the wider university space, there is more available. So as I've mentioned, it's important that we do adapt, and we're still a community, just one that is very socially distanced at this time.
Okay. And then the last thing I want to ask you in this regard is, do you have any advice for a matric who's about to do their first year, and it's a first year unlike anyone has ever seen? It's going to be weird. It's going to be lonely. What's your advice?
It is unique in that, last year's first years got a taste of campus, I think about 3 months. I suppose 2.5, because we started the lockdown in March. For first years in 2021, my advice to you is as follows. You are still not alone. And I think that is something that is absolutely crucial, and a point that I must emphasize with absolute sincerity. We tend to view isolation as a singularity. And what I mean by that is that if, for example, the space I'm in, if I'm isolated here, I would feel very alone. If I have very little human contact, I would feel alone. But thankfully, we still have a lot of technological advancements that we can use to reach out. What's important now is that we reach out more than we would have previously, because we unfortunately will not have the luxury of simply walking into a lecturer's office or meeting a friend at coffee bars or haloa, or sitting on the grass and opening our textbooks together. It's important that we start early. Prepare yourself now. Not wait until it's exam time, where lecturers are busy marking and their responses to emails become slower. Do not wait until such a time where social relationships and groups and whatnot have been built and you're pushing to find yourself in some way. As soon as you enter, hit the ground running. Never be afraid to ask. Request all of the relevant information. Request all of the relevant contacts, and get yourself a go-to person. It can be a faculty student advisor. It can be a student leader. It can be a mentor. We have STARS mentorship, where they have numerous mentors available to assist you as a first-year student. So speak up, speak out, ask for help, and don't be afraid to reach out. When you do so, you'll realize that you may be isolated, but you are not alone.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That answered a lot of my questions. I think it's going to be an interesting year, but I also think it's kind of, so I've seen a lot of posts where people say things like, so there was a woman who posted a photo of her saying that in 2020 she had started a business, bought her first car, and something like that, like gave her first payment on a house or whatever the case may be. And she then asked the question of, what did you achieve in 2020? And I don't know if she was being arrogant, like, what did you achieve in 2020? Or if she was genuinely being like, asking people to share their successes. But someone responded to that and they said, the comment was, this is honestly not the year for these kinds of questions. You should not be asking people what they accomplished, because a lot of people haven't accomplished anything, and they should not be made feel bad about that. Just surviving the year is more than enough. And whilst I get where that is coming from, I really do, I still think it's bullshit. And the reason why is because we've been thrust into this ridiculous situation that no one's ever experienced before, but that does not take away your ability to grow yourself as a person. And I'm not talking, about, growing your understanding of it. I mean, growing, like achieving things, adding skills to your repertoire, and, becoming a person who is more well-rounded and who has achieved incredible things. This lockdown doesn't mean you need to give up on your dreams. Now, obviously, in some cases, things are difficult. So, for example, if you wanted to open a restaurant, that's shot. I mean, that's like, This is not the year to open a restaurant. Probably. I mean, property prices are as low as they're ever going to be, but it's not a good year for that. However, there are so many things you can work on in complete isolation. A lot of things. So, for example, a big one is fitness and health.
Right.
Fitness and health you can do in a 2x2 meter square. Right. You can turn yourself into a bodybuilder. I mean, it's like it's the ultimate equalizer, because 99.9% of people have the ability to become healthy and to become fit, and you can't buy it. It needs to be earned, and it can only be earned through hard work. You know, so fitness is a big one, and there's a few more. People who want to start online businesses, this is a great time to get into that. People who want to learn a language, this is a fantastic time. Duolingo is free. Go on, get Duolingo, learn a language, learn a language in a month. It can be done. There's a lot of skills that can be learned, a lot of things that can be picked up. Write that book. If you've ever wanted to write a book, there's never been a better time ever to write a book. If you had no ideas to write a book, there's a shitload of ideas available now. We're living in a weird time. There's a lot of stories that can come out of this, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to get to is, whilst it is terrible that this lockdown is going to continue lasting for at least another couple months, probably 6 to 7 more months, it gives us a fantastic opportunity. Because what that means is, if you were the guy who in the beginning of lockdown said, right, you know what, we've got 3 weeks of lockdown, which is what we thought we had in March. And you said, we've got 3 weeks of lockdown. In these 3 weeks, I'm going to get into the habit of waking up early. I'm going to eat super healthy. I'm going to start that book I've always wanted to write. And I'm going to spend this new free time that I have, because I don't have to drive anyway. I'm going to spend this free time reading. Okay? Right. Those are your resolutions. And let's say that you failed miserably. You got into a late, you wake up at, 11:45 every day. You failed. It's, these things happen. It's hard. you've now got this great reset because your opportunity is not gone. In fact, if you started right now, it's definitely not too late. You can start today and you still have enough time to take as much advantage of lockdown as possible. So I think that if I were to give advice to a first year who is probably not going to see their first semester on campus, as you've said, I think my advice would be to, prioritize your academics, obviously, do things as you will, but also realize that you will never have as much free time as you have right now. Because, previously, students have a lot more free time than anyone else anyway. Now it's way more. We've got your academics is not going to take as much time in your day as it would have.
Right.
You've got no commute anymore. Lectures are being cut down to be as efficient as possible and so on. You've got a lot of extra time. So if I were a person who's going to be starting my first year now, or even, any other year, my goal would definitely be to use this time to build the skills now that I'm not going to have time for in 6 months. Because once you get on campus and once you're moving around and you're drowning in papers and you have to hand things in that, you have to be at lectures, it takes a certain amount of time. There's a lot of travel. You're exhausted physically because you're moving about all the time, which is what university's campus does to you.
Right.
You're not going to have time then to do that thing that you've been wanting to do. So as bad as it is that lockdown is still going to be a long-term thing probably for us, and that the vaccine is not going to work overnight, you have so much time still in front of you.
Right.
Don't worry about the time that you have wasted from March until, today, which is, I think, the 16th or 17th of Jan. You start today or start tomorrow. Tomorrow's a Monday. So it's always better to start on a Monday. Start tomorrow. Wake up early, do your thing, and by the time you are on campus and by the time you finally get to live that student life that you've been dreaming for, you are starting from a way better platform than you would have otherwise.
I want to tell you a story.
Tell me a story, David.
All about how my life got flipped. So no, I'm not going to. But yes, you are legitimately reading my mind. As I have mentioned, life is a matter of decision. I've been speaking to very many schools recently, and my message to them has been, we are in an age of the unexpected. And I call it the age of the unexpected because, as you've mentioned, we did not expect that lockdown would last for as long as it did. We did not expect that the battleground for our academic success would have fields that are socially distant. We did not expect that the ink that flows with sleepless nights would drip onto pens that rest in our own domiciles.
I think that fell apart in that last piece there.
I feel like that was pretty clever.
I don't think ink drips on a pen. I think you meant to say page.
You got me there. Right. But the ink that no. I did mean to say pen.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's two pens. One on the upper part is dripping onto the lower pen.
No, I mean when you were writing, essentially ink is dripping
onto the pen.
Yes.
How are you writing, David? How are you holding this pen?
Let's not get into semantics. I'm on a roll.
Right, continue.
I will educate you about proper penmanship at a later stage.
We'll talk about it later.
But my message has been, we are in an age of the unexpected. And even in an unexpected situation and circumstance, there is still a choice to be made. Either we can choose to give ourselves over to despair, we can choose to overcome. I'm going to open up and say that 2020 for me has been one of the most difficult years I've ever had in my personal life. And this would surprise many people because a lot of the messages and emails and interviews and everything that I've done, like, man, 2020 was a good year for you. It was a terrible year for the world, but it was a good year for you, man. In 2020, I nearly lost someone who is irreplaceable to me. Literally held an individual in my arms as they were dying. I remember being in a space where I'd have to travel between provinces every day just to make sure things were okay, where as a family, there were no funds coming in. On top of that, I was still running the SRC. I was still in the Commonwealth. I was still an honors student. And I remember end of year, I think I might have gotten more awards than I've ever gotten in my life in 2020. So close to the end of the year, someone asked me, congrats on a fantastic year. It must be nice being you. And I said, I don't think it's nice being anyone. The greatest people in the world, the richest, the loveliest, the most beautiful, we all have our own difficulties and our demons that we are wrestling with. But even in such a situation and circumstance, we have a choice to be made. Someone once asked me, you're like the happiest guy ever. You're always chilled and you're always in a good mood. I bet you don't have your difficulties. I would retort that and say, it is those who recognize the difficulty of their situation that recognize the importance of maintaining your upbeat attitude, of choosing positivity in the midst of despair. In 2020, I became one of the Mail and Guardian's top 200 young people. I was on the JCI top 10 young outstanding persons in the country. I was nominated for an award by the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. I was nominated for a Raising Legends Award. I won SRC Member of the Year. I got two gold standard honors in leadership. I got my honors degree, and there were very many things. I remember sitting down one day and saying, I bet you a lot of the great people in the country aren't going to apply for anything now, because they're probably not even thinking about trying to build themselves. And I said, what, if that's the case, I'm going to apply for absolutely everything. And everything I applied for, I won. And it's funny how it elevated my platform to an extent where I was now able to reach more people. In a speech I gave on Wednesday, one of the things I said was, you must stand up and you must grab your ovation, because no one will clap for you until you appreciate yourself. When you do so, you shall overcome. And that is not an overestimation. And I call that the triple O. And the triple O is so crucial and so important because it is a constant in life. Things are gonna suck. Things will be difficult. Many times we will want to stop. But as I have mentioned, life is a matter of decision. And you'll realize those who make those difficult decisions are always those who overcome. You cannot stop me. You cannot stop JC. And to the person listening to this right now, if you take the decision, I know it is difficult. I know it is an impossible situation. I know you might be in a shack where you have to walk 4 kilometers to reach the nearest phone post. Those were the calls that I got. I ran 8 kilometers to make this call to you, Dave. You might be in a situation where you're living in the best, most beautiful house, but your parents don't talk to each other and it's too awkward to exit your room. You might be in a situation where you're being beat up each day, but you can't escape the situation. But even in that, if your mind is right, then absolutely nothing can break you. And eventually it is that same mind that will deliver you to your success.
So tell me, you mentioned that everyone has demons. What's your demon, David?
I love how direct you are. I have several, I suppose. One of them would be that I am unfamiliar with the concept of sort of relaxation. It is a foreign concept to me, and that concerns me. And the reason why it concerns me is because everyone needs an outlet. Everyone needs an escape. It is not healthy to work 24/7. And I find that I go through great efforts to make the time to unwind and to relax. Another has been that I carry with me the concerns of those whom I am pushing to assist. When you bring an issue to my attention, it's as if it is my issue. So if it is an issue that if it is an issue that remains unresolved, I cannot say I feel it as much as you do, but those are the instances where I will struggle to sleep that night because I'm thinking of you. I preach excellence. I believe in excellence. And I suppose another difficulty that I have had is my view of excellence has been predicated by success. And by that, what I mean is you might be excellent, but not necessarily successful. You might be successful, but not necessarily excellent. So for me, when the two are not intertwined, for example, that was an excellent paper you wrote or an excellent speech you gave and so on and so forth. I always do something with a goal in mind. So if I feel like I've done something and I have not reached my goal, I do not consider it excellence. Therefore, I do not consider it success. And these are the things that I wrestle with. So I suppose those are the demons that I have. What are your demons, JC?
Balance. Balance is a problem I have been dealing with since I got out of high school. And it's a problem that has caused, it's a thing that's caused big weights on my relationships with friends, and it's with everyone in my life. Balance between work and quality time.
Right.
I've got this idea in my head of this future I want to have it, and it's very specific, and it's getting more and more specific as time goes by. And there's so many things I want to do and achieve. So I'll take an example from my relationship with Tasita, my girlfriend. So there's a very specific life that I'd like to provide, okay? And this life requires me to be successful, financially successful, because it's an expensive security that I'd like to provide. So now there's this battle in my head, because on the one hand, in order to achieve that life, I will have to work very hard, many hours. And I'm okay with that. I can do that. I've done that. But the problem is that when you put all your hours into work, then the relationship suffers. So now you spend so much time working to make this dream, whether it be a dream for yourself, a dream for your partner, a dream for your family, a dream for your future. You spend so much time making sure that it works that you forget the other part of the equation, which is the people you want to take with you, the things you want to take with you, the things you already have. You can't neglect those things to work on the things that you don't yet have, because you'll find that when you finally do get there, and by the time you're sitting on your throne, you will be alone. Because all these people who you were doing it for in the first place have been lost through the fact that you haven't been spending enough time maintaining the relationships. And even if you are a person who works entirely for yourself, you can also lose yourself, because you move along and I can very easily, when I was just getting into stock trading, it was right at the start of the pandemic, and that was my thing. That was when I realized I will never have this much time again. Let's learn how the stock market works. Because people dedicate their lives to learning how it works and succeeding at it, but they don't have enough time. If you're someone who's only doing it on the side, you're never going to be able to make a real success out of it. So I thought, let me learn as much as I can. Let me develop a system that does this for me automatically, so that when I don't have enough time anymore, I don't need as much time, because everything's automated. when I started developing that stock system, I would get up in the morning at dawn and I'd work until I went to sleep for days. I mean, research, analysis, development, trying and testing, things fail, we try again, running simulations, blah, blah. There was always something new to do. And I felt like what I was doing was really worthwhile because I knew that it would pay off. And I did that for a few weeks. And when it was done, I realized that I had severely damaged a lot of relationships because I was not responding to people's messages. I was not, there was no date night with my girlfriend. I wasn't sitting down with my family for supper and chatting. When I was talking about the system, So to get back to the point of losing yourself, you can start to lose the passion for the things that make you happy in the first place. You spend so much time making sure that you will always be able to do the things that make you happy, that you entirely lose your passion for those things in the first place because you're not growing that passion. So I suppose, I've had countless conversations about this with my father and with many people in my life around angst about future, because you think to yourself, if I sit down now and I work for the whole day, that's a big step towards the future in my head. But it's one step forward and it's two steps back. Because while you may be advancing in one thing, you're stepping backwards in another. So the answer, of course, is balance. You need to have balance. You need to schedule your day in such a way that you can do all the things you want to do at work. You need to be as efficient as you can and do as much as you can. But when that clock strikes the hour that you say is finished, then you need to spend time with the people or the things that you love, Spend time with your family. Spend time with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your friends. Or sit down and play those games that you want to play. Or go out and run, or, do the thing that you love. And I find immense difficulty in that. Because when I'm done and I close up my laptop for the day, it's a never-ending list. There's always something new to do. There's always something to upgrade. There's always something to work on. There's always a new idea. I could sit and work for, 1,000 hours straight, and it's never going to work. But when I end the day and I close my laptop and I start to just relax or I start to spend time with people, I start to feel guilty that I'm letting them down. Because now I'm sitting across the table from my girlfriend and we're having supper together. And I'm worried that what if I miss out on that future I dream of by just 1 hour? What if this is that hour? What if me working now would have made the difference between that? And it's difficult because it means that I struggle to live in the moment. I struggle to enjoy what's in front of me now because I'm always thinking of what will be in front of me next year. And working endlessly for financial security or for success or for awards or for positions or whatever, it's not insurance in the way that you think it is. Mm-hmm. So, that's something I've struggled with. When I was in first year, my degree suffered because I didn't prioritize it above my business.
Right.
And other things over time, other things suffer and are replaced. My list of priorities, the distribution of my attention is never what it should be. I'm constantly trying to figure out what that is. I'm definitely further along now than I was this time last year with regard to figuring that out. But when it comes to what keeps me awake at night and what my demon is, I think it would be that. It's just I can never let go of that feeling that because I'm not working right now, this is the hour that's going to make that difference. This is I'm closing the laptop now, and 15 minutes later I would have had a breakthrough, and that would have changed everything. What if I'm missing out on that? And it's terrible. And I can talk about it. I've spoken about it to many people, and I understand the issue thoroughly, but it still gets to me.
I think it's very similar, and I appreciate how open you are about this, because I think there is a commonality in that demon and the one I described. I refer to it as being unable to relax, but the reason why I feel like I can't relax is because I sit down and I feel like I should be working, so I get up and I go work. So the reason why I appreciate your openness is because I think it is something that so many people have, and as we spoke about previously, I think we all react to it differently. For example, the woman who posted about her car and her first payment for the house, I would assume that if she ever felt that way, she got up and she went to work and worked things out. And there are those of us who have that feeling, and it causes us to despair, so end up not doing anything. And I think it's very important that anyone and everyone hears that it's okay, because we're all running our own races. Yours might be a sprint because you're always full throttle. Mine might be a marathon. The next person might be a relay because they'll need that additional support. But it's okay for our success not to be instantaneous. And I think the one thing that you and I have in common is I'm 24 this year. I feel old. I'm 24 this year. And I feel like I have not started anything. And you're very young. I mean, you're like, what, 20?
21, yeah.
Yo, hi. I'm still not over that.
No, you say that, but I mean, you're now saying, you're 24, you look at me and think, I should be further along. I'm filled, my life is filled with people who make me feel like I should be further along.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we all feel like we should be further along.
Yeah, I know I think we are saying the same thing. I mean, it's like I was saying earlier with those guys, the stockbroking guys. I mean, some of them, I'm trying right now. My goal this year, my financial year, started on the 14th of December. So my goal is that by the 14th of December 2021, I want to have beat out the investment banks like Discovery and so on by a good margin. Like, I want to beat them at what they do, which sounds ridiculous, but I feel like it's a really good goal. And that, I mean, investment banks will get you a return of like 7 to 10%. A good bank, really good bank, will get you 7 to 10%. So if I can get a 20% return on the portfolios that I manage, that's fabulous. Like, that would be brilliant. However, there's these guys on the group who've like quadrupled their investments. They're looking at like 300-400% returns on their investments just because they made really good moves. And that makes me feel terrible. Again, like I said earlier, I feel so lucky to be able to talk to these people, but I also feel very behind, and I feel like I've got catching up to do. And it's not just in that, it's all over. I mean, you see it in the media. How many people, I remember the crowning moment of my life when I started to feel like I was a little bit behind where I wanted to be, was when I found out how young some of the artists I listen to are. I mean, there are people who have, for example, Lil Nas X,
right,
who sang Old Town Road. Old Town Road broke a record that had been set many years ago. And that record was the most consecutive weeks ever #1 on the charts. I can't even remember what the number was, but it was stupid, David. It was like, it blew the previous record out of the water. It was crazy. And this guy's like, I mean, how old's he now? He's considerably younger than me.
He's probably younger than you.
Yeah, he's younger than
I was
me.
going to say he's like my age.
No,
okay.
he's like 20. He's like 19 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But then you get other people, YouTube personalities. I mean,
Right.
people who are like a year older than me, and look where they're at.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what was the name of this boxer dude? Jake Paul.
Yeah, Jake Paul and
Jake
Logan Paul.
Paul and Logan, these dudes had their own houses and like 6 cars when they were like 21.
Exactly.
You know,
I mean,
your age.
yeah,
Yeah.
it makes you feel behind it. There's a meme of a guy who's putting on he's putting on clown makeup, and it says, "Me getting ready for work," when there's an 8-year-old who made $18 million this year.
You know, Ryan's Toys.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. So looking around, I know you're not meant to compare yourself to other people, and usually when people say don't compare yourself to others, what they're talking about is your body. Because that's the thing. You say, "Oh, I feel so out of shape. I feel so fat," and then people say, "Don't stop looking at the people around you. Just focus on yourself." And people say that with regards to success as well. Stop
Right.
looking at the people around you. Just focus on yourself. But it's hard, man, because you realize that amongst the people who you admire, you are in last place.
Mhm.
And I suppose people fail to think about the fact that, you're above average still, or you're ahead of where you need to be. Or it's like you were saying before we started recording about how, you shouldn't be worried about where you are. I received a voice note from a friend of mine just before you got here, where he was talking about how he was watching a video where they said, if you're in your 20s, like, now's not the time to worry about where you are. Now's the time to try new things and to live and to travel and explore and that sort of thing. And I get that, and I see it, and I really understand.
But you disagree.
But no, I don't disagree. I just can't get rid of it.
I think I share the same sentiment. If I look at social media, I'll give a very quick example of sort of how things have shifted. I was teaching a class on journalism. Lord knows why I was teaching a class on journalism, but I was giving a class on journalism. I realized this is not my area of expertise, so I spoke about things that I know of. So for example, if you look at the influencer industry, it's now 2021. The projection for 2021 is that it will be an industry worth about $15 billion. In 2019, it was worth about $7 billion. If you look at the Victoria's Secret fashion show, it has since been discontinued. And the reason for that is because eventually the organizers realized that you can get more eyes on your product in one person's Instagram post than you will in spending 50, 60, 70 million dollars on putting together a fashion show. They would hire the most amazing artists, Bruno Mars and Beyonce and whatnot, to come and to grab people's attention. And when they looked at the television numbers, it wasn't even in the millions. At some point, it was, for the entire world, it was in the millions. And that's a very minuscule number. So now you look at how the industry, and I'm talking about the influencer industry, has grown and it has developed. And it has now has now become an industry where it is basically success sells. The more amount of followers you have, the more you'll get paid. The bigger your engagement ratio is, the higher your rates. The more you can portray, the more popular you become. There was an individual who did a social experiment, got a green screen, and would start posting a very lavish lifestyle every day. And in about 2 weeks, he went from, I think he had like 8,000 followers to about 36,000. And that's in a 2-week time frame. And it goes to show that we have an inherent need to achieve the greatness that is within us. I think fundamentally, whether we admit it or not, we all strive for greatness. And the issue then becomes, how do we address that need, that want, that desire? Some of us feel that if we can portray it, then we've done a good job. Others, we simply want to have it and we do not care about how it's portrayed. For others, we want to achieve it because our success will enable the success of so many others, like the example you gave, providing financial security. So, no, I totally get it. And I think what is most important is, like you said, finding the balance that works for us. I think my balance will not be your balance, and vice versa. It has been said of extraordinary individuals, and I'll make an example. I think I might have said this when I first entered here. An institution is an institution is an institution. You can have the most extraordinary individual ever, but if they are within an institution that has a very negative or toxic institutional culture, it will either diminish their greatness or they will be resented within that particular space. And this is very much what we're seeing. Either we're boosting each other up or we're pulling each other down. But the problem with boosting each other or pulling each other is we're looking at each other when we should be looking at ourselves. And I think that's where we start to see the major shift, massive requirement in my book.
So what are we gonna do about this? How are we gonna figure this out, David?
Are you talking about our demons?
Yeah, how are we gonna solve this problem?
Right. I just want to be clear. The problem of balance, the problem of our demons, all of the above.
All of the above. Everything. These things that present themselves, how are we going to solve these problems?
I think it begins with a level of introspection and realizing that we should not rush. It took me a long time to get to this point. For example, if I'll give an example. I was invited to speak the one time, and there were 2 speeches in the same week. The one speech, I got paid about 5K to go and do it. It was about a 30-minute speech. So cool, I'm doing the thing, I deliver it, fantastic. Now I sit and I think on my own, you know. As I mentioned, I wrestle with excellence. So I'm like, could I have done that better? No, I think it was good, you know what, I'm satisfied, I think I did okay. Now, the next time I was invited to speak, they asked me what my rate was. And at this point, I'm thinking, you know what, I think I'm worth a lot more than I was giving myself credit for. So I asked for 15K. I just threw the number out there. I didn't think they'd pay me 15K for like 30 minutes.
Shoot your shot, yeah.
Yeah, I shot the shot and they agreed. And the one thing I had realized was the first time I was simply looking to ensure that I was able to do what I felt like I needed to do, to have that success of impacting others. So as soon as I got the shot, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter. Just give me, I will go, I will do the thing. And the second time I really sat down and I thought to myself, when I realized my worth, I realized that it is important to ensure that we do not rush, that we do not jump to conclusions, and that before looking at others, we look at ourselves. So I think the way to solve the issue is that we really take time, we introspect, we ask ourselves the hard questions. And once we do that, we ask ourselves the value of our worth. And when we know that, we will have a better understanding of how to apply it, because we would have had the time to sit and to stew and to think, and then put it into action. Now, just a quick tangent on how this would relate to balance, because I think that's sort of one of the overarching issues that we had touched on. How to address the notion of balance, I think it's like you said, simply create a priority list. I think the first time we were on this podcast, one of the things we discussed was how do you get things done in the day? How do I get things done in the day, and so forth? And literally, even now, I have a calendar. I put on a to-do list. I do things at a certain time. And honestly, I would have not passed. I got my honors last year. I would have not passed my first 2 degrees if I did not set a time, because literally I would set a time 2 hours every day. and I would not study outside of that time. And genuinely, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have passed.
Yeah, so ladies and gents, if you want some advice from David Kabwa, study no more than 2 hours a day. Never spend more than 2 hours a day on your academics ever, and you'll be invited to speak and be paid 15K. That's the secret to success.
That is the secret right there.
Yeah, please continue.
I was gonna expand just real quick. I want to give a quick example of JC Steyn. And it's nice that I can do this without you getting a big head. I'm gonna brag about you, brother. You know, I feel like I should raise a toast and brag and boast. I want to put this thing down by the mic so you can hear. This is me with a glass in my hand. I'm about to speak about this man, and I hope it came across in terms of
You gotta
sound.
check the camera again, hey, because you've moved the camera now.
Okay, you were still good. Your hair is still looking fresh. You're still looking good, my brother. Still looking good. Yeah. So now the one thing that's very fascinating about JC Steyn, and I suppose this is why I admire you, and also why I drove 3.5 hours to come and do this podcast. I remember, and we had spoken about this, but I want to sort of go on a different tangent, a new light, if you will. When I had met JC Steyn, he was just the man who was trying everything. And my first thinking was, this is dangerous. The reason why it's dangerous is because I had considered such an endeavor to be futile. The reason why I considered it to be futile is because I had known of too many people. You know, we all know those people. They're extremely busy, but busy with nothing. But they're busy all the time. And they're even busier than you or I. But there's no substance to the busyness. They're just busy. The one thing I realized about JC Steyn is the busyness and the undertakings that you take on. You do not do it by happenstance. First of all, you sit and you look at yourself and you look at, what am I capable of? What am I incapable of? And I think that is something extremely powerful. Oftentimes we'll listen to motivational speakers. We'll feel good. We feel like we can do anything. But we do not sit and understand what we are capable of and what we are incapable of. We take off things that we shouldn't. We take on things that we should not have. And then become demoralized and don't understand why it doesn't work, because we do not sit and think about what our limitations are. Yes, we can push past our limits. We can get better, but we need to understand, first of all, that there are limits. So that was the first thing I had picked up on. Once you have identified what you are capable of and what you are incapable of, this is where you sit down and you plan. You say, okay, well, this is what I want to do. This is the time frame in which I want to do it. And you set tangible goals. That's another thing. You actually set goals, and you set goals based on how you view your current capabilities, meaning that it is achievable. And once that's done, you can expand your goals. I mean, planning for 20%. First, you're like, yo, me, I want to be better. As a matter of fact, no, 20%. That's what I'm looking at. That was starting on a goal, looking at the capability and expanding it. And then what you do is you organize your priorities as such. So for example, if you were stubborn and you just said, me, I want to do stocks, nothing else but stocks, and you made that your number one priority, you would not be as successful. And immediately you realize that. So you say, okay, this is still something of substance, still something that will help me, but I'm not as good as I want to be. So until such a time as I am, it will be on my list, but of a lower priority. And I have sat with ambassadors, I've sat with ministers, I have sat with royalty, African royalty, European royalty, I've sat with Nobel laureates, I've sat with the greatest of the greats in this world. In very few instances do you see such an epiphany in human beings. Most people kind of find their way. I'll give Angela Merkel as an example. You know, she just happened to be in a political party. She was a chemist. She was the spokesperson, really good at speaking. Someone suggested her that she runs for head of the party, realizes she's actually good at politics, then she's off to the races. It was not a situation where she sat and planned and looked and considered and it just kind of happened. So most people go through life with the hope and the expectation that, you know what, maybe it will happen. I always give the example of, you can pray until you're blue in the face for a job, but if you don't submit your CV, you can pray, nothing will happen, because there is the part that you have to do. And the one thing about you is you have been very intentional in doing what you want to do. And you are always critical of yourself. You analyze yourself. You know, this works, this does not work. And to those that are listening, I think that's the one kind of takeaway that I would like to leave you with in this particular conversation. There has been a saying, if you do not plan, then you plan to fail. In addition to that, I want to say, today marks the first day of the rest of your life. Your best today may not be as good as your best yesterday, but so long as it is your best, it is better than good enough. So sit down, look at yourself, look at your life. You know, like we all have this dream, this thing we kind of envision ourselves doing, but oftentimes it falls to the wayside. Look at that. Look at how you can achieve it. Look at what will prevent you to achieve it. But instead of having your head in the clouds, look at what is practical, look at what is real, and then never limit your dreams. You might not be able to now, but that does not mean you will not be able to in future. And that is the biggest thing that I respect, and why I was saying off air on this podcast, I have a 15-year plan. Most people that know me know that. I haven't told any human beings what I'm planning in the 15th year. I will say it is literally my ambition will change South Africa. It will change the world. Children shall read of me in their textbooks. So I was telling JC, I don't remember if we were on air when I told him this. Later on, I'm going to come and I'm going to make this man a proposal, because it's like I'm looking up a hill and I can see where you are going, because I see the kind of individual that you are. And the thing is, all of us are able to do this. It's just a matter of making a decision. And you know, like people are motivated by now. Me, I'm sure. You're motivating them. Me, I'm motivating them. But when they turn off this podcast, listen to me, whoever is listening to this. When you turn off this podcast, you are in your room alone, and this nice feeling of motivation disappears. The only thing you will be left with is your decision. If you decide, no one and nothing will be able to overcome you. Nothing. But when I say that, I mean it by emphasizing plan. You may not always go according to your plan, but start somewhere.
I agree with you. And start today. That's something important. If you have a goal and you put it off, and you say, I'll start on Monday, I'll start tomorrow, I'll start in the new year, I'll start in the new month, I'll start when I get here, when campus opens, I'll start blah blah blah. It's as soon as you give yourself an excuse as to why you can't do it right now, what you're doing is you've set the bar. So for example, a conversation I was having yesterday with my dad says to me, listen, you should take collagen. Would you take collagen? And I said to him, I can't take collagen. It's an animal product. I don't eat animal products. But I'll find something.
Like vegan?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll find something that's vegan and I'll take that. And he was like so taken aback. He's like, that's so ridiculous. Why would you not just take collagen? Just take collagen. Like, it's not And I said to him, as soon as I set the standard for at what point will I throw my own rules out the window. As soon as you set that bar, now everything above that bar is free game. And it's the same. If you say, I want to wake up tomorrow at 6 a.m. but it's already 1 a.m. and I'm really tired. I'm not going to get enough sleep. So I'll start the next day. You've now set the bar. And that bar is, you will not wake up if you think that it's going to be hard. You will not wake up if you think you're not going to have enough sleep from it. So from now on, any time that you encounter that same situation, you've already given yourself a free pass to give up.
Exactly.
So if you say to yourself, you know what, I'm so less to just, I've been so unfit for so long. I just want to get fit. But yeah, it's been a hectic day. I'll go to the gym tomorrow though. Now, what have you done? You've set the bar, which is I don't go to the gym if I've had a hectic day. And how many hectic days do you have, David? Most days are hectic days.
Indeed.
Now you've set the bar. And the next time you have a hectic day, 2 weeks ago, you gave yourself a free pass. And when you have a hectic day, no need to exercise on that day. You've already given yourself that. You've signed it off. So as soon as you make an excuse for yourself, that excuse counts always.
Right.
So make no excuse, ladies and gentlemen. If you have that thing that you've been thinking about for the whole podcast, you've made it up until this point, you've been thinking, shit, I just want to learn Spanish, man.
This is your message for 2021 right here.
If you say, I want to learn Spanish, I want to learn it. I don't know any words. Learn it now. You know, start right now. Turn off this podcast, close the app, close the browser, download your language learning app, you know, open up Microsoft Word on your laptop and type the first 3 words of your book. You can change them later. Or get down on the floor and do 20 push-ups, but do it right now and make sure that you never give yourself an excuse to not do it.
Hashtag make no excuse.
David, thank you so much for coming.
I appreciate it, JC.
All right. Everyone who's listening to this, have a great day. Thank you, David. And thank you again, Heinrich, for the intro, which I will now also use as an outro. So yeah, rock and roll. Have a good day, everybody.